The notification came at 2:47 inches the morning. I know the exact time, because I had just finished charting my last patient notes, still in my scrubs, still smelling like the hospital, sitting at my kitchen table in my Seattle apartment with a bowl of cereal I hadn't touched. My phone was face down next to my laptop. I flipped it over out of habit. It was an alert from my credit monitoring app, the kind that shows up in red. Urgent. New account opened in your name. Estimated liability, $285,000. I put the cereal bowl in the sink. I sat back down. I read the alert 3 more times. The account was a business line of credit, extended to a company called Holloway and Daughters Event Group, LLC, registered in Georgia. I had never heard of this company. I had never been to Georgia. And I had never, not once in my 31 years of life, signed anything that looked remotely like a business loan application. But there was my name, Maya Holloway, listed as the primary co-signer. My mother's last name, the name she gave me when my father left, and she decided his memory wasn't worth keeping. Have you ever had a moment where the floor doesn't just drop out from under you, it dissolves, and you realize it was never solid to begin with? Tell me your story in the comments. I read every single one. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I'm a pharmacist. I've spent 8 years learning to stay calm when the stakes are someone else's life. I know how to read a document and not panic. I know how to move through fear the way you move through a crowded hospital corridor forward. Eyes ahead, no unnecessary motion. I opened my laptop. Holloway and Daughters Event Group, LLC had a website. It was bright and pink, with gold cursive lettering. It sold wedding coordination packages, luxury centerpiece rentals, and what the homepage called boutique Southern elegance experiences. The owner listed on the About page was my sister Desire, 23 years old, no college degree, no business experience, no savings that I had ever been allowed to know about. Desire. My mother Claudette's favorite word, her favorite child, her favorite project, the one for whom nothing was ever too expensive, too impractical, or too much to ask. I scrolled down. There was a phone number and a contact address. The address was my mother's house in Savannah. I closed the laptop. I sat in the dark, and I let myself think about the ledger I had been keeping privately in my head for the past 6 years. The $9,000 I wired when my mother said the roof was leaking and she couldn't afford to fix it before winter. The roof that I later found out had been replaced the previous spring, and the money went toward Desire's first car. The $14,000 I sent over 18 months for what my mother called bridging gaps while Desire was getting her footing. The $6,500 I paid directly to a credit card in my mother's name after she called me crying, saying she'd made some mistakes, and the interest was swallowing her alive. None of it was ever paid back. None of it was ever mentioned again. I was the one who had left Savannah on a bus at 18 with 2 suitcases and a scholarship. I was the one who had worked 30-hour weeks during pharmacy school. I was the one who had never once asked either of them for a single dollar. Not because I didn't need it sometimes, but because I knew, the way you know things about families that no one says out loud, that asking would cost me more than the money was worth. And I always told myself that was fine, that I was the strong one, that I could handle it. What I understand now, sitting in that kitchen at 3 in the morning, is that I had mistaken my own silence for strength. It wasn't. It was just a different kind of payment. I picked up my phone and called my mother. She answered on the 3rd ring. Her voice was thick with sleep, but there was something underneath it, a readiness, like part of her had been waiting. Maya, do you know what time it is? I know, I said. I just got a credit alert. There's a business loan in my name, $285,000. Would you like to explain that to me? A pause, 4 seconds. I counted. Oh, that, she said. Her voice shifted into the register I knew better than any other sound in my life, the soft, reasonable, slightly wounded tone she used when she wanted to make me feel like the unreasonable one. That's just paperwork, baby. Desire needed a co-signer to get the business off the ground. You know how these banks are. They won't give a young black woman anything without someone established behind her. We were going to tell you. I looked at the ceiling of my apartment. I looked at the bowl of cereal in the sink. I looked at 8 years of my own careful, quiet life that I had built from scratch without a single safety net. You forged my signature, I said. We used your information, she said. That's different. I want to be very clear about something. The rage I felt in that moment was not the hot, loud, impulsive kind. It was the other kind. The kind that arrives cold and stays cold and makes everything around it extremely sharp. I recognized it from the one other time I had felt it the day I was 15, and I found out my college fund, the one my grandmother had started when I was born, had been quietly emptied to cover Desire's middle school tuition at a private academy. My mother had explained that away too. You're the smart one, she had said. You'll get scholarships. Desire needs more help. And I had nodded and gone back to my room and gotten every scholarship they had to offer. That was the first time I understood that being capable in this family was not a gift. It was a liability. I did not yell at my mother. I told her I would call her back. I hung up. Then I called someone I had not spoken to in almost 2 years. Her name is Patricia. She's a forensic accountant turned consumer protection attorney, and she is the most methodical, unforgiving, relentlessly precise person I have ever met in my life. We went to the same church growing up. She moved to Atlanta 12 years ago and has spent every year since then making financial fraud cases very uncomfortable for the people who commit them. I had her number saved under P-Legal because I had always known, somewhere in the back of my mind, that one day I might need it. She answered on the second ring. "Patricia," I said, "I'm sorry for the hour. I have a situation." By the time I finished describing it, I could already hear her typing. "How long have you been a co-signer on this account?" she asked. According to the credit alert, the account was opened 11 weeks ago. "And you had no contact from the lender? No calls? No mail? Nothing?" "Nothing. My name, my social security number, my professional credentials, and presumably my signature were used without my knowledge to secure a business line of credit for a company I have never heard of in a state I don't live in." "Maya," she said, and her voice had gone very flat and professional the way voices do when someone shifts from person to attorney mid-sentence. "This isn't a family misunderstanding. What you're describing is identity fraud combined with forgery. Those are federal offenses." "I know," I said. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to do everything," I said. "Freeze my credit across all 3 bureaus, file a fraud alert, pull every account, every loan, every inquiry that has my name attached to it going back 5 years. I want to know every single place my information has been used." "I'll start now," she said. "Send me the credit alert. And Maya, don't contact your mother again tonight. Don't contact your sister. Don't leave any record of this conversation with them until we know the full scope." I sent the alert. I closed my laptop. I went and stood at my window and watched the lights of Seattle reflect off the water, and I thought about my grandmother, Nana Ruth, who had saved every dollar she could spare for 18 years to give me a head start that was spent before I ever knew it existed. Patricia called back the next afternoon. Her voice was different, not panicked. Patricia does not panic, but there was a weight to it, a deliberateness, that told me whatever she had found was not going to make things simpler. "The business line of credit is real, and it's in collections," she said. "Desire drew the full amount down in 2 withdrawals over 6 weeks. The business has no registered assets, no revenue history, and no operational activity. It's a shell." I closed my eyes. "But that's not the part I need you to sit down for." I was already sitting. "When I ran the full inquiry history on your social security number, I found something. 4 years ago, your information was used on a different loan application, a personal installment loan, $50,000. That loan was fully paid off 18 months ago, so it never triggered a credit alert. It wouldn't have shown up unless someone specifically went looking." "Who took that loan?" I asked, though I already knew the shape of the answer. "The application listed your mother as the borrower and you as the co-signer. The address on the application was yours. Your license number was on it. The signature is yours. Or rather, it's someone's version of yours." I thought about the $50,000. I thought about the year my mother had redone the entire first floor of her house in Savannah. New floors, new kitchen, a sun porch that she posted pictures of on Facebook with captions about creating a peaceful sanctuary. I had liked those posts. I had been happy for her. I had paid for all of it. "There's one more thing," Patricia said. I waited. "The loan broker on the $285,000 business line of credit. The person who submitted the application and vouched for the borrower's character and creditworthiness. I ran the name and it came back to someone you might recognize. A man named Gerald Holloway." My chest went very still. Gerald Holloway was my uncle, my mother's older brother. The one she had been telling me since I was 9 years old had stolen from the family and disappeared. "He did not steal from the family," Patricia said, before I could speak. "I ran a full background on him. He has no criminal record, no fraud charges, no civil judgments. What he does have is a real estate portfolio in Atlanta and a very clean financial history. But my mother said—" "I know what your mother said," Patricia told me. "I need you to hear what the records say. Gerald Holloway is currently employed as a licensed commercial lending consultant. He is the broker of record on your sister's fraudulent loan application. And," she paused, "he called my office this morning. He asked to meet with you. I drove to Atlanta the next day. I want to tell you what I was feeling in that car, alone on I-20 heading east. I want to tell you it was clear and resolved and purposeful. But honestly, it felt like driving through fog. Everything I thought I had known about my family was rearranging itself behind my eyes, and I couldn't see the shape it was making yet. Patricia's office was on the 14th floor of a glass building in Midtown. She met me in the lobby. Tall, precise, wearing a charcoal blazer, and an expression that told me exactly nothing about what I was walking into. "He's already here," she said. "He's been here for 40 minutes. Gerald Holloway did not look like a man who had stolen anything and fled. He was in his early 60s, broad-shouldered, with close-cropped gray hair, and the kind of stillness that only comes from a person who has spent a long time making peace with something difficult. He was sitting in Patricia's conference room with his hands folded on the table and a manila folder in front of him that he had not opened. He looked at me when I walked in, the way you look at someone you've been waiting to see for a very long time. "You look exactly like your father," he said. I sat down across from him. My father left when I was 4. My mother never spoke about him, except to say he was gone, and we were better off without him. I had almost no memory of his face. "My mother told me you stole from the family," I said, "that you took money from my grandmother and disappeared." He nodded slowly, like he had been expecting those exact words. "I know what she told you," he said. "I'd like to tell you what actually happened, if you're willing to hear it." I was willing. Gerald and my mother had both been named in their parents' estate when Nana Ruth passed 11 years ago. The estate included the Savannah House and a managed investment account that Nana Ruth had built over 40 years of work. The account was worth just over $380,000. Under the terms of the will, the account was to be split equally between Gerald, my mother Claudette, and one other beneficiary. Me? I felt the word land in my body like a stone dropped into water. "Me," I said out loud. "You," he said. "Ruth loved you. She worried about you. She knew what your mother was, and she wanted to make sure you had something that was yours, something Claudette couldn't touch. She put just over $125,000 into a separate designated account in your name to be accessible when you turn 25. I turned 25 6 years ago." "I know," he said. "I never received anything. I never heard from any lawyer. I never knew any of this existed." He opened the folder. He pushed a document across the table. It was a letter from an estate attorney dated 8 years ago, redirecting the disbursement of my designated inheritance to a joint account in my mother's name, citing that I had provided written consent as I was living out of state and preferred the funds managed locally. The signature at the bottom was mine, or someone's idea of mine. Patricia was very still beside me. She had seen this document already. She had known this was coming and had said nothing because she needed me to see it fresh. I looked at Gerald. "Why didn't you fight it?" I asked. "You knew this was wrong. Why didn't you come to me?" He leaned forward. "I tried," he said. "I contacted the estate attorney. I contacted a probate court. Your mother told everyone I was creating conflict out of greed. She told the family I was trying to steal your inheritance for myself. She made herself the protector and made me the villain, and I was fighting a story that had already been told so many times that no one believed anything else. And you," he said, his voice quieter now, "I didn't know how to reach you without making things worse. You were building your life. I could see that. I watched from a distance. And I told myself that if the day ever came when you were finally ready to know the truth, I would be here." I thought about what it meant that he had been watching. A stranger who was not a stranger, someone who shared my blood and my grandmother's name, waiting at a distance for the moment I would finally be willing to fight back. "The $285,000 loan," I said. "Your name is on it." His jaw tightened. "Desire used my professional credentials without my authorization. Someone accessed my brokerage account and submitted the application using my broker number. I found out 3 weeks ago. I was already building a case when Patricia contacted me. I came to you because this is connected. What's happening now is the same pattern, just bigger. And I think your mother believed that if Desire's business failed, they could let the debt fall on you and disappear, the same way they let your inheritance disappear." I sat with that for a long moment. Then I said, "What do we do?" He said, "We finish it." The next 10 days were the quietest of my life, quiet on the surface. Underneath, Patricia's team was moving like a current. Credit bureaus contacted. Fraud affidavits filed. A forensic handwriting analyst compared my actual signature to the ones on both loan documents and the estate redirection letter. The findings were unambiguous. Gerald submitted a full statement to the Georgia Secretary of State's office, detailing the unauthorized use of his broker credentials. My designated inheritance account was located, intact, in an investment account my mother had been drawing from in small amounts for 6 years, careful enough to stay under the threshold that would trigger automatic flags. She had been very careful, for a very long time, and then she showed up at my apartment. I don't know how she got my address. I had moved twice since leaving Savannah, and I had never given it to her directly. She was standing in the hallway when I got home from a shift, still in my white coat, keys in my hand. She looked smaller than I remembered. My mother has always had a largeness to her, a physical confidence that fills whatever room she's in. Standing in that hallway, she was just a woman in a good coat with tired eyes and a story she needed me to believe one more time. Maya, she said. She stepped toward me with her arms slightly open. Baby, we need to talk. You don't understand what you're doing. You're blowing up your own family over nothing. Over paperwork. I looked at her. I didn't move toward her or away. Over $125,000 that my grandmother left me, I said. Over a forged signature on a $50,000 loan. Over my name and credentials on a fraudulent business application. Is that the paperwork you mean? Her face shifted. The softness didn't leave exactly, but something behind it hardened. You always had everything, she said, and her voice was thinner now, less practiced. You were always the smart one. You had your scholarship. You had your career. Desire needed help. You could afford it. I didn't say anything. I was thinking about Nana Ruth. I was thinking about 18 years of quarters and saved birthday money and a handwritten will that said for Maya, so she always has something of her own. You spent what she left me, I said, and then you kept taking. I raised you, she said, and now the performance was gone and what was underneath it was raw and ugly and very tired. I gave you everything. You owe this family. I took my keys and I unlocked my door. I opened it and stood in the frame. You didn't give me everything, I said. You took everything that was given to me and told me to be grateful. Those aren't the same thing. Her face went through several things at once. Anger, calculation, something that might have been, briefly, shame. You will regret this, she said. I've been paying a debt I never owed for my entire adult life, I said. I'm not doing it anymore. I closed the door. I stood with my back against it for a moment in the dark of my apartment and I noticed something. My hands were not shaking. My heart was not racing. The thing I expected to feel, the guilt, the grief, the desperate urge to open the door again and fix it and make her okay, none of it came. What came instead was quiet. The kind of quiet that arrives in a room when something that has been making noise for a very long time finally stops. The hearing was not what I expected. I had prepared myself for a fight, for my mother's lawyer to construct some version of events in which she was the victim and I was the ungrateful daughter who had abandoned her family and was now coming back with lawyers to punish them. I had prepared myself to feel small. Instead, I felt like myself. Completely, clearly myself. Patricia did not raise her voice once. She presented the handwriting analyst's report. She presented the estate redirection letter alongside the probate court records. She presented the credit history, showing the original $50,000 loan, the forgery, and the systematic withdrawals from my designated inheritance account. She presented Gerald's sworn statement. My mother's attorney said the word misunderstanding 4 times. The judge appeared to find this increasingly unpersuasive. The judgment came in 3 parts. First, the $285,000 business line of credit was formally severed from my name and declared fraudulent as it pertained to my liability. My credit report was to be corrected within 30 days. Second, the estate account containing my grandmother's designated inheritance was to be transferred to me in full, with interest, immediately. Third, the court referred the matter of the forged signatures and estate fraud to the county district attorney's office for further review. I watched my mother's face when that third part was read. I had expected the collapse I had seen in other people in other hard moments, the crumpling, the tears, the reaching for someone. But she just went still, like something behind her eyes went off, like a light that had been burning for a long time finally ran out of fuel. Desire was beside her, crying in a way that had nothing to do with remorse and everything to do with the specific panic of someone whose plan has stopped working. I looked at them both and felt something I did not expect. Not satisfaction exactly, and not anger anymore. Something more like clarity. The kind you can only have once you stop looking at something through the distortion of wanting it to be different than it is. After, Gerald walked out with me to the parking garage. We stood beside my car in the yellow fluorescent light, and he reached into his jacket pocket and took out an envelope. "What's this?" I asked. He said it was a letter, that it had been written by Nana Ruth to be given to me when I turned 25. The estate attorney had kept it. Gerald had retrieved it when he built his case. I opened it standing there under those lights. Her handwriting was small and precise and slanted slightly to the right, the way I remembered from birthday cards. She wrote that she knew what my mother was. She wrote that she had made peace with it long ago the way you make peace with weather. You don't choose it, you just decide what to wear. She wrote that she had tried to make sure I had something that would still be there when I was ready to stand on it. She wrote that she was sorry if it took longer than she planned. She wrote that she believed I would find my way to it eventually because I had always been the one in the family who knew that the truth was not something you could outrun, only something you could choose to face. She ended it by writing, "I love you, Maya. Go live your whole life. You've earned it." I stood in that parking garage and I let myself cry in a way I had not cried since I was a child. Not from grief exactly. From something that doesn't quite have a name. The feeling of being seen by someone who is no longer there to see you, and being held by it anyway across the distance. Gerald stood a few feet away and did not try to fill the silence. He understood it. A week later, I moved. Not far, just a different apartment in the same city, one I chose without considering proximity to anyone else's needs or expectations. With high ceilings and a window that faces west and fills with orange light every evening around 6. The first night in that apartment, I sat on the floor with a glass of wine and my phone, and I went through my contacts. I was looking for every place my name had been loaned out without my consent. Not financially this time, but emotionally. Every obligation I had inherited. Every relationship I had maintained, because the cost of not maintaining it felt too high. I didn't delete everything. Some things are worth keeping, worth rebuilding, honestly, from the ground up. But I was done keeping things simply because I had always kept them. I was done paying a toll I never agreed to just to stay in a family that had decided my purpose was to be useful. I thought about something Nana Ruth had written. You've earned it. Not the inheritance, the life. I had spent so many years believing that I owed my competence to the people around me. That being the capable one meant being the one who absorbed the damage. That leaving was a kind of selfishness, and staying was a kind of love, even when the staying was costing me more than I could count. What I know now is this. The people who love you do not require you to keep paying to prove it. And the people who require payment are not loving you. They are billing you. My name is Maya. I am 31 years old. I am a pharmacist. I live alone in a west-facing apartment in Seattle, and every evening at 6, I sit in the orange light, and I am exactly where I belong. If you have ever been the capable one, the responsible one, the one everyone calls when things go wrong, I want you to hear me. Your competence is not a debt. Your success is not a resource to be extracted. The people who see you clearly will never ask you to fund their lives at the cost of your own. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to stop paying. You are allowed to keep what is yours. And if you've had to cut an anchor that looked like family, drop a comment below. I want to hear your story. Please share this with someone who needs permission to put down the weight they've been carrying, and like this video if any part of Maya's story felt like your own.